All right, guys, I'm going to have to unmute my mic there. Let's start from the beginning, guys. Dr. Thompson with Exemplify Health Center, a Wellness Way affiliate right here in Yorkville, Illinois. Sometimes you do have some technical difficulties like clicking a button to unmute your mic. So, guys, we're going to talk about RSV tonight. I've gotten this question a couple of times, so I want you to answer. I want to answer this for you. Maybe put your mind to rest because so many people that are concerned about viruses, really what they're concerned about is they think that a virus is something that attacks them, like a bacteria attacks them as well. And so we're going to answer this using facts, using data, and also what you guys can do in order to strengthen your immune system, specifically in children. All right. So if you guys are watching me right now, make sure you say hello. Make sure you let me know where you're watching from, and let me know where what you're going to be doing as far as your Thanksgiving celebrations, especially if you are here in the United States. So let's talk about this right now. As far as RSV, is it the next pandemic? What is it? What does the CDC say about this? And what can I do in order to strengthen my immune system responses? So while we are waiting right now for people to jump on line, guys, make sure too that if you don't follow us on these platforms again, as far as the upload of this live video that we're broadcasting on Facebook, you'll be able to find this on YouTube, where we have all of our other live videos archived, almost all of them. Some of them have been banned. You can find a majority of them on our Rumble platform, well, at Dr. Nathan Thompson. And then also you can watch a short version of this video on TikTok. We also are on Instagram, Dr. Nathan Thompson, True Social, and Telegram, and also Twitter. We're on all of those platforms because you never know when we will be off of this platform as well. So if you don't, I would always appreciate if you follow us on those platforms as well. And guys, also coming up in a couple of weeks, I believe this is on December 8th. It's on a Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. We'll be going over inflammation, the approach to inflammation. Guys, so many times, and this is, no exception like today, a guy who came into obviously suffering with massive inflammatory issues, that are going on, taking testosterone replacement therapy, taking 19 different supplements, doesn't feel very good. A lot of symptoms of having a lot of inflammation. He's just like, I just feel like I've given up because, I feel like I've just been led in the wrong direction. And nobody has known how to approach inflammation first and foremost. And the reason why, guys, this is so important to address is because it's almost like the scab on your knee that doesn't heal. And it doesn't heal because, well, you keep falling on it every single day. And at that point, it doesn't matter how many natural anti-inflammatories that you're taking. It doesn't matter how many supplements that you're taking. It doesn't matter, what you are doing. The first thing you must do is figure out why you keep injuring it. And so that's the first step to healing, is figuring out why you are injuring your body. Because remember, this is that low immune system function, weight loss resistance, cancer, infertility, thyroid disease, hormone issues, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, first and foremost, are an inflammatory issue. And if you do not address the cause of the inflammation, then anything else is just replacing this or that, whether it's a medication or whether it's a supplement as well. December 8th, I believe it's December 8th. It's on a Tuesday. For more information, you go to the top of this page, pinned. If you are from the Chicagoland area, you can register for that event coming up at 6 o'clock. It'll be the last one that we do of the year. So, guys, the reason why I've gotten this question is actually because I see on social media people are saying RSV is so terrible, respiratory syncytial virus. It's the worst than it ever has been. And now you think, like, what on earth is happening here? We got to worry about the flu. We got to worry about COVID. Now we got to worry about RSV. And guys, again, a virus has no nefarious plan. The virus is not alive, actually. So it is a protein wrapped, within a fatty acid membrane, essentially, is what it is. So it doesn't have a brain, doesn't have a plan. It's not waiting in the wings to attack you. It doesn't come back for winter in order to attack you and then somehow leaves during the summertime. And so it begs the question, why are we more susceptible during this time of year? And there's a million different reasons why, and three big reasons is that, number one, stress levels go up. Number two, we're not in the sun. Vitamin D goes down. Vitamin D levels go down. And then number three, this is the time, guys, where we eat such copious amounts of sugar. I'm going to show you an interesting article about that in just a little bit. But the CDC came out just a couple of weeks ago an alert, and they said increased respiratory virus activity, especially among children early in the 2022-23 fall and winter. So they are sending an alert out to doctors and saying, hey, here comes the virus. We're seeing an uptick in specific viral infections, specifically RSV. So pay attention and be alert. So the CDC is already making announcements regarding that this is going to be worse than usual. Okay. So the CDC has said that. So obviously doctors are going to be broadcasting that you got to be careful, as if they're not saying anything in regards to here's what you can do in order to increase your immune response. Here's what you can do to make sure you're not decreasing your immune system response. Basically what they are saying is well, what you need is make sure you get your vaccines and catch it early so that you can get some kind of antiviral treatment. And guys, you know that this is in the news today because I did one search engine. I just looked up one search term, RSV, and this was on the front page. Okay. It was something that was extremely emotional. Okay. Opinion. I'm an epidemiologist, so I'm the expert, and my daughter's RSV case shook me. Okay. Parents are missing work at record rates to take care of sick kids. RSV is on the rise among older adults as the hospitalization rate climbs to 10 times. Mom's share of dangers of RSV at 7-month-old is hospitalized. All right. So you can see here that in the news on the front page is actually not a lot of facts as much as it's a lot of fear. And that is one of the wonderful things about where you are getting your search terms from, or what search engine you're actually using. And so when you look at this, the biggest thing that I'm going to say is that they're trying to influence you based on fear. And remember this, they've been doing this over the last 2.5 years, influencing your behavior based on fear. And remember this, when you are in fear, then you don't listen to the facts. When you are in fear, it puts you in a state for you not to make a rational decision. Now, one of my other reasons why I think that a lot of respiratory viruses and things have gone up, especially for this year, is this is really for kids the first time, at least in our area, where kids haven't been quote unquote mandated or required to wear masks. So kids are social distancing masks. They're not actually sharing specific microbes. They're not sharing, they're not getting exposed to each other. And so they're missing out on exposure in order to help build a healthy immune system response. And now they are. And now, yes, their immune system can be exposed to a lot more microbes and viruses, a lot more than what it used to, which is kind of like asking someone who has never trained to say, I want you just to lay in bed all day. And then after 2 years, I want you to get out of bed. And then I want you to go ahead and pick up this 400-pound barbell. And if you can't do it, well, I'm sorry. You know, I guess that now we are suffering an epidemic of muscle weakness. So that can be one of the things. But when you look at this, you're seeing how they're actually just pushing fear. I'm going to go over the actual fact statistics. I'm going to show you about RSV and look at it from a different perspective. Now, here's another website as well. And this comes from Sanofi. 72% of this is at the front of their website. This is actually a website dedicated to RSV. And on the very front says 72% of infants hospitalized for RSV were born at term, they're not premature, with no underlying conditions. That's funny. Because obviously I'll go over that. This whole idea is that if a healthy child ends up in the hospital, then they were not healthy. They were not immunocompetent. They had to have been immunocompromised. And so someone saying that they were healthy is because the doctor isn't testing and the doctor isn't looking deep enough. It's kind of like when someone says, Bill just had a heart attack and he went to the doctor a week ago and he said that Bill, according to his testing, was healthy as a horse. Well, obviously he wasn't, because healthy people don't die from heart disease. Healthy people don't die from cancer, and healthy children aren't going to be hospitalized from RSV unless there was some underlying immunodeficiency as a result. So I looked at this and I thought, oh, wow, look at a website that's dedicated to educating people based on RSV. And so when I looked at this website, I said, okay, let's look a little bit deeper. And this a little bit deeper actually shows you that this specific company is a pharmaceutical company whose primary thing that they do is manufacture vaccines. And here it is right here. These are all of the vaccines that they manufacture. So Lord knows when on earth are they going to try to come out with some kind of RSV vaccine, which there isn't one right now, but you can sure bet your bippy, if I can say that they're in the works of doing that, okay? I want you to tell you this, okay, first and foremost. Let me preface by saying this, is that are there kids that are terribly affected by RSV? The answer is absolutely, because I know someone was going to come on. They're going to give a story about how someone was hurt by RSV or ended up in the hospital. I understand that. I get that. And so there's no doubt that some people are a lot more susceptible. But rather than make a blanket statement, we should actually be figuring out why that child actually got sick from a virus that 98 to 99% of kids have no problems or no issues with. The reason why we live our lives in fear is because of this. It's the pharmaceutical companies who drive the fear, and it's the pharmaceutical companies who sell you the solutions. So rather than get emotional, one of the things that we have to do is we have to look at the facts. So I went to the CDC and looked at symptoms and care of RSV. So people infected with RSV usually show symptoms within 4 to 6 days after getting infected. Now, this is what's interesting, guys. Why does it take 4 to 6 days in order to have the symptoms of getting infected? The reason why is because the symptoms of runny nose, decrease in appetite. Now pay attention to decrease in appetite, because I'm going to touch on that in just a little bit. Coughing, sneezing, fever, and wheezing are not the virus doing it. It's the immune system trying to clear out the virus. So guys, I want you to think about something. If this is the symptoms that the body's trying to clear out a virus, then why do we want to dry up a runny nose? Why do we necessarily want to feed a sickness? Why do we try to suppress a cough, sneezing? Why do we try to artificially lower a fever with fever-reducing medications like Tylenol or acetaminophen? Why are we doing those things? Because it's actually the immune system giving that child the cure in order for them to be able to clear out that virus. Guys, we have lost faith that the body is intelligent, that the body is beautifully designed. But for some reason, we have so much faith. It's almost as if we go to church on Sunday with all the faith in the world, but by Sunday night, we completely forget that the body is intelligent, that the body never makes a mistake. The body knows what it's doing, and it doesn't mess up. It's the body trying to adapt. Now, when they talk about care, this is what CDC actually says. Most RSV infections go away on their own in a week or two. There's no specific treatment for RSV infection. The researchers are working on developing vaccines and antivirals. Isn't that interesting, though? Is that if someone has a virus, doctor says there's nothing that we can do, go home. But if it's a bacterial infection, then they sure as heck say you got to be on an antibiotic or you will die from it. So guys, when you look at this, is what's interesting is that when it comes to a virus, the best care for a virus is your body's own immune system and keeping it strong. So they talk about RSV in infants and young children. Again, this is coming from the CDC, is RSV can be dangerous for some infants and young children. Well, I'll ask that question. I'll explain to you why that is dangerous in some children. But then again, any virus is going to be dangerous in some children, because when you look at any kind of virus, any virus has the capacity to hurt anyone, and it's based on their ability to be able to adapt to virus, for example, whether they have immune system sufficiency or not. So who is it mostly involved? Infants, especially those 6 months and younger, children younger than 2 years of age with chronic lung diseases. Now, wait a second. So they got to be two years or younger, but they also have to have an underlying chronic lung disease. My question is, why does a child at 2 years of age already have a chronic lung disease i.e. like asthma, and what actually caused the asthma and what caused that immune system reaction to cause them to have some kind of reactive airway disease, or children with weakened immune systems. So what are they saying? They are saying infants or those who have underlying conditions or who have weakened immune system. And the question always goes, why does that child have a weakened immune system? And what do they mean by 6 months or younger? Now, here's what's interesting. Here's what they say, the CDC. So this is the CDC actually saying this. Virtually all children get an RSV infection by the time they are 2 years of age. Most of the time, RSV will cause a mild cold-like illness, but it can cause severe illness like bronchiolitis, inflammation of small airways of the lung, or pneumonia. So what did they just say? Is that virtually every child by the time they're 2 years of age has already had an RSV infection. What does that mean? That means that it is unavoidable. We try to avoid any kind of virus or any kind of bacteria so much in our child. And what happens is, because that we are trying to avoid them from getting any kind of immune system exposure, immune system stimulation, is we have a new generation of kids that have turned into adults who are very immunologically immature. It's kind of like saying, hey, Billy, I don't want you to get hurt, so I'm never going to have you exercise. And then when they get older, they have to be able to get up and pick things up, and they can't because you've never allowed them to be able to adapt and be able to get stronger. Now, why does it can cause pneumonia? It's actually not the virus that's causing pneumonia. It's a secondary infection from a bacteria that already lives there within the actual lung lining, okay? Now, here's what they say. 1 to 2 out of every 100 children younger than 6 months of age with RSV infection may need to be hospitalized. Now, wait a second. What that means is if you took 100 children 6 months and or under, and they had RSV and had an infection from it, only 1 or 2 out of that 100 would need to be hospitalized, and an overwhelming majority of them will actually need a little bit of help due to things like they're not eating and drinking enough. They may need some help breathing, but most of them are discharged within a few days. So think about that. 6 months of age or younger, the number of children that need to go to the hospital is 1 to 2%. Okay, so it's about a 1 to 2%. I would say risk factor of needing to go to the hospital or needing fire department type care. So it's 1 to 2%, which begs the question is, what on earth were the 98 to 99% that actually got through this infection without any kind of problems? Now, does this just affect just young children? No, because now this can actually affect older adults and adults with chronic medical conditions. Who are those? Generally, they're the people who are immunocompromised. So who's at risk? Older adults, especially those 65 years or older. Why is that? Has nothing to do with how their age. It's because their immune systems are beat up that way because of their lifestyle, or adults with weakened immune systems. So when an adult gets an RSV infection, they typically have mild cold-like symptoms, but some can develop a lung infection or pneumonia, which is a secondary bacterial infection because of the inflammatory response that's happening at the lungs. Now, older adults are at greater risk than young adults for serious complications with RSV because your immune systems weaken when we get older. Now, I'm going to wholeheartedly disagree with that blanket statement. Now, just because your immune system weakens as you get older, is that common? Yes. Is that normal? No. It's kind of like saying as you get older, you're supposed to get fatter. Well, yes, you do see that quite a bit, but it's not because you're getting older. It's because you are getting more inflamed and you keep damaging specific systems that are impairing your body's ability to be able to burn fat. It's like saying, well, as you get older, you're just going to get type 2 diabetes, you're going to get cancer, you're going to get heart disease, and there's nothing that you can do about it. But guys, when you continue to have bad behaviors over a period of time, yes, those things will drive down your immune system. But notice how they never say, here's what you can do in order to help your immune system responses. So this is the question, guys, and you can use this as ammunition whenever someone says, well, it's genetic, or when they say there's nothing that you can do. Because when you say 1 to 2% of kids 6 months or younger, it's not actually 1 to 2%. And let's just take our chances, or hopefully, we're not the ones that are getting affected. Because think of this, why do 2 children, they get exposed to the same virus, yet they have a vastly different response? Because it is the same virus, but the only difference is that it has to come down with the strength of the host. It's the strength of the host. And if a doctor doesn't know why a child could be more negatively affected than another child, and the reason is because they have no idea what's happening in that immune system's child. See, we take our children to the pediatrician and get checkups, but what on earth are they actually checking up? Are they actually checking your child's immune system? Yes, you can actually measure your immune system way deeper than a CBC with a differential. What they're doing is weighing and measuring, making sure that they meet those specific milestones, but really that pediatrician visit is actually to get all of their vaccines. So again, ask this question. Can you answer this question? Why do 2 children exposed to the same virus, to the same environment, but they had 2 vastly different responses? I want to take you guys back to a medical textbook of physiology, Guyton and Hall's medical textbook of physiology. Sometimes, guys, I wonder, is your doctor, pediatrician, your internal medicine specialist, your endocrinologist, have they actually gone back to the basics and relearn the basics to see how the body actually functions? So when people are saying, I caught a virus or I caught a bacteria, know what you did is you did the things that made you more susceptible to something that was already there and present. So here's what Guyton and Hall's medical textbook of physiology says about the immune system. They say our bodies are at all times exposed to bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites, all of which occur even normally and to varying degrees in the skin, in the mouth, and then the respiratory passageways, the intestinal tract, and the lining membranes of the eyes, and even the urinary tract. Guys, even you have bacteria that are lining the urinary tract. So think of this, is that if your child has strep, they did not catch strep because strep is normal bacteria that resides in the mouth. So maybe your resistance gets down and the normal bacteria that the immune system keeps in check has started to overgrow. Why? Because you're feeding it more, and also because you have a lowered immune system response. So our bodies have a special system for combating the different infections and toxic agents. This is composed of the white blood cells. How do they work? By destroying invading agents, by phagocytosis, or basically cell eating, and by forming antibodies and sensitized lymphocytes. Okay, sensitized lymphocytes, like specific killer T cells that reside around the area of infection indefinitely around the barrier where you had the infection. Remember, if you had a natural infection, you'll have sensitized T cells that will sit where you had the infection, ready to attack a viral infection next time you have some kind of exposure to it. Now, you'll never get that if you bypass the barriers and actually go through the skin and inject some kind of protein to try to just merely stimulate an antibody response. You will not develop sensitized T lymphocytes. So think of this, guys. When I ask that question, it's not the virus, it's the strength of the host. Guys, we will always be going in the wrong direction if we're trying to attack a virus, or if we're trying to claim dominance and control a virus. The only thing that we can do is we can only control the strength of our immune system. And the strength of our immune system has shown time and time again to be more than enough. So here's the question, guys. Are babies born with the ability to be able to handle a virus? Literally every single day, I have run into a patient or someone who comments who said, I really want to see my grandchild, but my daughter or my son, they won't let me see the grandchild unless I have a vaccine or unless I wear a mask, because they truly believe, and I don't think it's to any fault of their own, it's because the pediatrician has misled them as far as how the baby's immune system actually works. And they think that the baby has zero protection to any kind of virus or any kind of bacteria, and that literally by getting exposed to one bacteria will literally destroy them and will cause them to have some kind of infection. So the question is are babies born with the ability to handle a virus? The reason why so many parents think that no, they don't, is because they think that the only way to handle a virus is through antibody production. And that's actually not the first line of defense to any kind of virus. So the question is do babies have the ability to handle a virus? And the answer is yes, it absolutely does. Before I go over this research study, let's go back to Guyton and Hall's medical textbook of physiology, because they talk about an idea known as leukopenia. Penia means a loss of or less than. If you have osteopenia, you have a loss of bone mass, okay? So leuko just means white blood cell. So it's just a fancy word that's there to scare you and give you a fancy diagnosis that you can be really happy about and tell everybody, you know, how cool you are with your diagnosis. So a clinical condition known as leukopenia occurs when the bone marrow stops producing white blood cells. Guys, I see this way more often than I'd like to admit when I have people who come in who actually have a low amount of low white blood cells overall. So think of this. Normally, the human body lives in symbiosis or balance with many bacteria because all the mucous membranes of the body are constantly exposed to a large number of bacteria. The mouth almost always contains very spirochetal, pneumococcal, and streptococcal bacteria. Wait a second, pneumococcal? And streptococcal bacteria? That actually is normal bacteria that lives within your mouth and mucous membranes. And these same bacteria are present to a lesser extent in the entire respiratory tract. The gastrointestinal tract is especially loaded with various colon bacilli. Now think of this. Any decrease in the number of white blood cells immediately allows invasion of the tissues by the bacteria that were already present in the body. So why do people get secondary infections like pneumonia from a viral infection? Because they were immunocompromised, and many of their resources that were there, because they didn't have enough of the white blood cells, they were actually trying to handle that viral infection, but it produced a lot of inflammatory response. The virus was able to spread to a lot more specific cells. And so what it did, it weakened the barrier and then weaken the immune response to allow for invasion of a bacteria through the actual lining or through that lung barrier to cause a secondary infection. So here's what they say. Within 2 days after the bone marrow stops producing, meaning you have no white blood cells available, ulcers may appear in the mouth and in the colon, or the person develops some form of severe respiratory infection. So I want you to think of this, guys. When we went back to 2 people exposed to the same virus, one gets sick for 2 or 3 days and one ends up in the hospital, then one of the things that must take place in order for this to happen is because they had to have had a low number of white blood cells, or a number of white blood cells that made their immune response insufficient. Now, going back to that question, can newborns and infants, can they have a response to viruses? The answer is yes, they can, because they do have something known as the innate immune response that is there and is present from birth. What kind of cell? One of them that happens to allow for the killing of virally infected cells and also cancer cells is known as natural killer cells. And you know what? Neonates and infants do in fact have natural killer cells. What's interesting about natural killer cells is that they are there and present in the body, but they are not doing very much function. And the reason why is because within the womb, you don't want those natural killer cells to have a high sensitivity to any kind of foreign invaders, because you don't want the natural killer cells to be attacking its own tissue. And what you would call that would be autoimmunity. But what's interesting within the third trimester is that these natural killer cells start to become more sensitive, and for very good reason, because it won't be long before that baby is now exposed to the external environment so that it can handle any kind of exposure to viruses in particular. So they do actually have what are known as natural killer cells. This would also explain why preterm babies who are born before they reach full term probably don't have the ability for these natural killer cells to become more sensitized, because they're getting born early and they haven't reached full maturity at that point. Neonatal natural killer cell function, this was actually in the Clinical and Developmental Immunology of 2013, coming from PubMed. And here's what they say: neonatal natural killer cell function, relevance to antiviral immune defense. Natural killer cells provide first-line innate immune reactions against virus-infected cells without any prior sensitization. So they don't need to be sensitized. They don't need previous exposure like a memory T cells. And you also don't need an antibody response. You don't need to make antibodies. And so babies already have a level of protection. So guys, a baby's immune system is just not, their bodies are just not left out there to die, and you need to keep them away from everything, but you still need to focus on making sure you're doing the things in order to help support the immune system. So here's the 3 things that I want you guys that you can do, and I pray that your pediatrician has sat down with you, had a conversation with you, and said, listen, here's how you can keep yourself out of my office, because we want to teach prevention more than anything else. We want to teach you how to be able to take great care of your child. We don't want you to live in fear. We want you to live knowing that you are doing the right things, because remember, when you live in fear, it allows you not to make the best possible choice for you and for your child, which is why we literally had 98% of kids walking around with masks, had no idea why that was happening. So here's the first thing that you can do. Number 1 is breastfeeding, guys. Breastfeeding is so important. I know we're going to get the question, well, what if I can't breastfeed? Okay. Now, we've had women who have come into the office who, for some reason or another, didn't have or they weren't able to actually breastfeed. And so we provided for them a breast milk alternative with a lot of healthy ingredients. I'm going to show you a pediatrician looked at that and said, it's not healthy, do this one instead. And I'll show you the ingredients of the one that pediatricians are largely putting kids or women who can't breastfeed on. But going back to this, is the reason why breastfeeding is so important is because of that you are transferring IgG antibodies from mother to the baby. Okay. Not only that, but you're also getting the perfect mixture of fats and proteins and carbohydrates that are perfect for the baby and perfect for brain development. Number 2, you got to limit simple sugars in your children. And number 3, yes, you can support the immune system. Okay. Now, getting back to breastfeeding. Now, here's what's interesting is that when it comes to antibody production, is that babies don't have the ability to be able to produce IgG antibodies on their own until about 3 months of age, and really getting into full function until about 6 months of age. So where should they be getting that additional support from their immune system to be able to have those antibodies? Meaning if there's an exposure, that those antibodies can actually coat the actual virus in a process known as opsonization, so that it doesn't, you can't have the actual virus be able to attach to a receptor and enter inside of the cell, and also to a flag other parts of the immune system to say, hey, I want you to actually clean this up. We'll put a flag on this so that this is where we want you to attack. So here's what's so interesting, guys, is because if a baby can't produce IgG antibodies on their own at a minimum of 3 months of age, but really not getting up to full capacity at 6 months of age, would it make sense? Why are they actually vaccinating any child at 3 months of age or younger, or even 4 months of age for that matter? And in fact, many times a child will actually leave the hospital already with some of their first vaccines. No, we're not talking about the vitamin K, but you're talking about hepatitis vaccine, which, by the way, the only way that a child can actually get that is to be an IV drug user, be sexually active. I doubt that that's going to be happening at 3 months of age or at 2 months of age. Okay. So just ask your doctor why you're recommending this if they actually don't have the ability to be able to produce any kind of IgG antibodies prior to 3 months of age. So that's why breastfeeding is always going to be the perfect thing to do it. That's why it should always be encouraged more than anything else, because mother is transferring antibodies from her and then also to the child. And that's why breastfeeding is so important, at least for 6 months of age, but ideally up to 1 year until the gastrointestinal system actually closes up, so that that child doesn't have a leaky gut, and you start giving him foods that then leak through the gastrointestinal system and can cause all kinds of skin issues as well. Why do you think so many kids develop some kind of skin issue when you start to introduce rice cereal at 3 to 4 months of age, even if the pediatrician recommends it? The reason why is that protein will leak through the gastrointestinal barrier. Why? Because baby's gut is supposed to be wide open. And the reason why is because maternal antibodies are a large immunoglobulin and it can't be passed through the cell. It actually has to be passed around the gastrointestinal barrier. So having a leaky gut in that instance is actually needed. Number 2, limiting your sugars and support the immune system. Here's an important reason why, guys. Sugar absolutely destroys the immune system. Why do you think diabetics have such a poor functioning immune system? Why do you think they're more susceptible to a virus or a bacteria? And it has to do with the idea of sugar. So here in the United States, we love our sugar. And in fact, right now during this time of year, we actually are celebrating eating copious amounts of sugar. I always say, I'm like, during the holiday season, my goodness, who are we celebrating here? Are we celebrating the reason for the holiday season? Or are we celebrating actually ourselves, and we using it a poor excuse to completely neglect our health, to put our health on the back burner and just check out and start celebrating ourselves during this time of year? Because I would say for the majority of Americans right now, they are celebrating themselves, under the guise of saying, hey, it's the holiday season. No doubt they want to go to so many different parties and things like that because, hey, I can eat whatever I want. And we just use the excuse that it's a holiday season. So, guys, this is why probably a lot of kids right now are getting sick if you gave them a lot of Halloween candy, okay? Here's the reason why. This is an old article from 1973. It's called The Role of Sugars in Human Neutrophilic Phagocytosis. What are neutrophils? You'll see that on a CBC. Neutrophils are the little eaters, and they're responsible for handling a bacterial infection, okay? So here's what they said. Oral 100-gram portions of carbohydrate from glucose, fructose, sucrose, which is table sugar, honey, or orange juice, all significantly decrease the capacity of neutrophils to engulf bacteria. Well, wait a second, Dr. Nate. Orange juice has got to be good for you. It's high in vitamin C. No, it's high in vitamin C, and it's also high in sugar. And vitamin C and sugar actually compete for the same receptor sites on a neutrophil. And guess what wins? It is always the sugar. So here's what happens. The decrease in phagocytic index was rapid following the ingestion of simple carbohydrates. The greatest effects occur between 1 to 2 hours after eating it, but the values were still significantly below the fasting control values up to 5 hours after feeding. Wow. So for 5 hours of eating just 100 grams, which would be the equivalent of having about 18 ounces of soda, which would be the equivalent of actually having like about 2 to 3 pieces of bread, would cause a significant decrease in phagocytic activity of those neutrophils. Now, on the other hand, here's what's interesting. So it's causing a decreased bacterial response from these phagocytes, but they say on the other hand, a fast of 36 or 60 hours significantly increased the phagocytic index. Isn't that interesting? So I want you to think of this, guys. Your child gets sick and they don't want to eat. Maybe your body knows better than you. And the reason why is because the reason why we don't get hungry during that time is because we shouldn't be eating sugar, and we do have enough nutrition in reserves to be able to support a fast. But doing that will help restore phagocytic activity of those neutrophils back to sufficiency. Now, this is why when so many people say, oh, fasting helps the immune system, fasting does this, fasting does that. Well, yes, it does, because lowering your sugar will help with the ability of the immune system to be able to function as intended. Guys, this was 100 grams consumed rapidly. So chances are you're going to consume that at Halloween. Chances are you're going to consume it at Thanksgiving. Chances are you're going to consume it probably in between Christmas or Thanksgiving and Christmas. You'll probably do it from Christmas to New Year's, and then you'll probably also do it on January 5th when you give up on your diet and just go back to eating copious amounts of sugar. All right. Now, here's what's interesting, guys, is because remember we said that, hey, breastfeeding is always going to be best. This actually comes from Similac, which is we would call it a artificial breast milk or otherwise known as formula. But here's what's interesting is when you look at the carbohydrate content of this Similac and just 5.3 ounces. Now, the average amount that I think a baby consumes is going to be, I think, about 25 ounces of formula or breast milk per day, which would actually come out to an infant, literally, that would be weighing, I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds, consuming about 55 grams of carbohydrates. Now, what kind of carbohydrate actually is it? Well, it's corn syrup, which is fructose. It is milk protein isolate. And also the next, one of the other top ingredients is sugar, and then also soy oil, okay? Which that in and of itself, guys, soy actually will decrease pancreatic activity, which is why they're probably not going to be breaking down and digesting their proteins from their pancreas all that well. Remember, the stomach and then the pancreas is what's responsible for breaking down proteins. Here's what's so interesting, though, is, well, I need my folic acid. No, you don't. You need folate. So folic acid, guys, is much different than folate. And not only that, vitamin C is should not be ascorbic acid because this is derived from corn. Usually it's actually genetically modified. So just think of this, that 55 grams of carbs in the form of mainly corn syrup and sugar are being consumed by babies, and it's no wonder it upsets their tummy so much, number one. And number two, it's the reason why maybe they could be even immunocompromised. So when you look at this, 66 grams of carbs per day in an infant that weighs anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds. So number three, what can you do in order to help support your immune system? If you have a young one and you want to support their immune system during this time of year, the first thing that I would say is okay, make sure they're breastfed, make sure that they're not getting copious amounts of sugar if they're past the point of actually breastfeeding. But you have children, what can you do during this time in order to help support their immune system? And yes, you can be giving them vitamin D. There's no question about it. The reason why I don't talk about it is that this should actually be assumed. But some of the things that you can do in order to help support the immune systems, number one, echinacea. Echinacea actually helps to feed those natural killer cells, guys, the natural killer cells. And no, there is no such thing as a cytokine storm. The only reason why a cytokine storm will happen when people say giving someone echinacea is because, number one, there's no such thing as a cytokine storm. It is, number one, they were immunocompromised. You give them echinacea, and then it feeds the natural killer cells to sufficiency, and those natural killer cells are trying to catch up very quickly. And yes, it produces a lot of inflammation, but it's not necessarily bad. Remember this, the body never, ever messes up. So echinacea helps to feed those natural killer cells, which are so important when it comes to handling a viral infection. Number two, elderberry. There's no doubt about it that elderberry is great. Guys, elderberry is going to be, yes, high in vitamin C. Elderberry is also going to be very high in zinc. So there is nothing that is necessarily super special about elderberry, other than it has a high vitamin C content and also has a very high zinc content as well. Number 3, medicinal mushrooms. Medicinal mushrooms have a tremendous antiviral properties to them. My favorite, especially for kids, is going to be reishi mushrooms. And in fact, we actually have an elderberry syrup that actually has reishi mushrooms already in there as well. So you actually would be getting vitamin C support that helps to feed those neutrophils. And you would also be getting some elderberry that has antiviral properties, as does zinc as well. And then the fourth thing would be colloidal silver, but I wouldn't use this unless they were already having some kind of experience of symptoms at that point. I wouldn't be giving colloidal silver every single day, but if they do have an active bacterial infection or viral infection, then I would be actually giving them colloidal silver to take that internally. You could also give colloidal silver as a nasal spray as well, in order to help kill off any viruses or bacteria if the immune system has a hard time keeping up. So am I opposed, to doing things that are antiviral? Not at all. If you have done things that have made you actually immunocompromised, well, then you may have to be on some things, colloidal silver and things like that, until you have time in order to fix your sassy behavior. So these things can be wonderful in order to help kids be able to, number one, handle a virus or handle a bacteria the way that we are supposed to. And just think of this, guys. The only thing this is that this is basically nutrition. It's nutrition in order to help provide sufficiency to the wonderful gift that was given to us, which is called our immune system. Guys, please share this video if you found it interesting, and please share it with other people so that we truly understand that, guys, the immune system, how it works, and to understand that we don't have to be living in fear, is that if we can get to sufficiency, guys, sufficiency is enough. It doesn't mean that your child's never ever going to get sick. It doesn't mean that they're going to not go through any times in which they are uncomfortable, because remember, as they're young, their immune system is learning. The more that you allow them to be able to be exposed to a virus, exposed to a bacteria with a healthy functioning immune system, the more that their immune system is primed, the more the immune system is ready to be able to handle other viruses and even cancers later on in life. So guys, please make sure that you share this video. And again, if you are watching right now and you're from the Chicagoland area, please go to the top of the page. Please get registered for Exemplify Health Center's approach to inflammation. So many people call us and say, hey, I want to work with you, doctor. I say, hey, just please get to the inflammation talk, because this will understand first things first on things that we have to handle first and foremost. Because if you're not handling inflammation first, then guys, getting your immune system tested when there are so many other issues that you have to address, is you would be working at it backwards. Inflammation is the foundation to everything else, which is why you need to know what it is, where it's coming from, and be able to lower those inflammatory triggers. So guys, if you're from the Chicagoland area, please go to the top of the page. Please get registered for that. Our last one will be Tuesday, December 8th at 6:00 p.m. That will be the last one of the year for a whole entire 4 weeks. Get registered for that so you can understand what you need to do in order to start taking charge of your health and not relying on a doctor who is never going to test you properly, who is only testing for fires, and who's never ever testing for causes. Guys, doctors do a wonderful job as far as putting out the fire, but we want to figure out why you got the fire in the first place. And if you had the fire, what do we need to do in order to rebuild the body after that? We're not the firemen, we're the crime scene investigators, and we are the carpenters to help rebuild your body after that. If you never ever rebuild your body, the only thing that happens is you continue to live in a sick and decaying house, which is where a lot of people are at. They're living to 80, but they've been decaying since they were 40. And that is no way to live your life here on this earth. We want you to be healthy. We want you to be vibrant. We want you to be full of energy. And that can happen if first and foremost, you first identify and start handling those inflammatory triggers. So guys, be well, be blessed. I hope you have a great rest of your night. And if I don't see you, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving holiday. Just make sure that you don't eat too much sugar. All right. All right, guys, be well, be blessed, and remember who you are.